Welcome to your video on quadratic formula with both exact and approximate answers. Over the past few lessons, we have been studying how to solve quadratic equations using quadratic formula. And within the quadratic formula, we have been talking about square roots. So the past few lessons have been focused on how to simplify square roots and provide answers in simplest radical form. So what we're going to do now is combine those two answers or those two concepts, and we're going to work on how to completely simplify our answers. So to begin with, I'm looking at this expression, and it kind of has the setup of the quadratic formula. If you think of the negative b would be here, the discriminant would be here, and then the 2 times a would be here. So you can see how it kind of fits the form. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the square root of 32. And we're going to ask ourselves, can we simplify this or break it down? So as we've done in the past, we're going to make a tree diagram. So I'm going to choose the factors 4 and 8. And then I notice 4 can be broken down to 2 times 2. I know that 8 can be broken down to 2 times 4. And then 4 can go down a little bit further. Now, I think sometimes it's helpful so that we don't get confused. Let's cross off all the numbers that we've broken down further. So the only values that are eligible to be used in our answer are going to be the ones at the very edges of our tree. So I notice that I have a pair of 2's here, which means I have a 2 outside for sure. I have another pair of 2's. And notice how I circled that last pair. The pairs do not have to be right next to each other. You just have to have 2 numbers that are the same. Now this last 2 doesn't have a pair, so that has to remain inside the radical. So I should conclude that the square root of 32, if I write it in simplest radical form, is actually equal to 4 times the square root of 2. So we are going to take that now, and we're going to replace the square root of 32 with the simplified radical form, 4 square root of 2. So we're going to rewrite this problem. We've got 8 minus 4 times the square root of 2, all divided by 4. Now, what I want you to notice is that all 3 of these numbers have a common factor. I can divide all of those by 2, but if I want to go bigger, if I was reducing, I can also divide all of those by 4. So this little triangle indicates that we can reduce all of those factors. And in this case, we notice that they're all divisible by 4. So this is going to provide us a very simplified answer. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, minus 4 divided by 4 would be 1. The square root of 2 is here. And then we have 4 divided by 4 is 1. So to simplify this, our exact answer would be 2 minus the square root of 2. Now, if we want the approximate answer, what we have to do with that is we have to pull up our calculator. Let's see, mine's not working here. See if I can get this to clear. All right, so if we do 2 minus, and then we just have to do the second. Whoopsies, I got too many in there. Clear that out again. Sorry, 2 minus, I don't know why this isn't working. We'll try this one more time, and if it doesn't, obviously this is very touchy. So 2 minus the square root of 2. And we're going to hit enter. And that gave us an exact answer. Now your calculator may actually do that. If we want to switch it, you have to hit mode and then arrow down to classic and hit enter. And then when we go back to our screen, unfortunately we have to type this in again. We'll see if my computer will work here. So 2 minus the square root of 2. Bear with me here. It's very touchy. 2. Close up the parenthesis and hit enter. Finally. All right. There is our approximate answer. So it's 0.585. Or if you rounded that, it could be 0.586. So, technical difficulties here. There we go. So this would be 0.586, we decided. All right. Hopefully this next one goes a little smoother. So the previous one we noticed just had the minus sign here. This one looks even more like quadratic formula because it has the plus or the minus. So to simplify, we are going to again start with the square root of 27. So I know 27 is divisible by 3 and by 9. And then if I break 9 down into 3 and 3, I can cross off the 9 because I've broken that down further. And then I notice that I have a pair of 3's and a singleton 3. So I have 3 square root of 3. This 3 square root of 3 is going to replace the square root of 27. So I now have 6 plus or minus 3 square root of 3 over 3. Now, to reduce, I again have to look for this kind of trifecta. Do all of these numbers have something that we can divide by? And they do. I can divide by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. I've got the plus or the minus. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And then I have the square root of 3 divided by 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I really have 2 plus the square root of 3 and 2 minus the square root of 3. And I think I'm going to spare you from watching me use that calculator on my computer again. So if you would be so willing as to pause the video at this point and type it in your calculator, then you can check. So when you do type it in, this is what you should get. 3.73 and 0.27. So for our exact answer, and I didn't actually mention this on the previous slide, but the equal sign, recall, means exact. So this answer is exactly equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. And that's both solutions wrapped up into one. This little symbol is the approximate symbol. And that means we're going to put it into our calculator and see about where that x-intercept would be. So we have 3.73 and 0.27. All right, so why are we practicing all of this simplifying? Well, the big idea is now we want to be able to solve for the zeros of our quadratic equation, but we want to be able to do it and provide both approximate and exact answers. So we're going to review this process of the quadratic formula. So we want to make sure that this is in standard form, which it is, ax squared plus bx plus c. And as long as it's in standard form equal to 0, we can go ahead and start and identify the ABCs. So a is 4, the coefficient of x squared. B is negative 2. C is negative 1/2. Haven't had a fraction before. We'll have to see how that works. So now what we want to do is find the discriminant, if you remember that vocabulary word. And the discriminant is going to tell us how many solutions we will have. That's the number that's going to go underneath the radical. So we would put in b squared, and parentheses are very important here, minus 4 times a times c. And at this point, you should probably pause the video, make sure you can type that in, and then when you check your answer, you should get 12. Now recall, the discriminant is what is underneath the radical. So we know that we're going to be simplifying the square root of 12. So I'm going to go ahead and break that down so that we can get our exact answer. So the factors of 12, I know that's even, so I can divide by 2. So 2 and 6. 6 is even, I can divide that by 2 to 2 and 3. So it looks like we have a pair of 2's, and then we have this singleton 3. So 12 is 2 times the square root of 3. Now we go to our quadratic formula, and we're going to start by replacing all of our values. So I want negative b, which is like negative 1 times b. So if I do negative 1 times our b value of negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 12, but we've already broken that down, so I'm going to replace that with 2 square root of 3, all divided by 2 times a. So now my next task is to simplify this. So I have positive 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 3 all over 8. So again, I'm looking for that trifecta, our little triangle here, which indicates reduce. So I'm looking at the 2, and the 8, and I know that I can divide all of those by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. So my exact answer would be 1 plus or minus the square root of 3 divided by 4. Now, to get the approximate answer, I'm going to have to pull apart this equation here. So I would want to do 1 plus the square root of 3 divided by 4. And remember, when you do that in your calculator, you would do 1 plus the square root of 3, hit enter, and then divide by 4. And if you calculate that, you would get 0.68. And then the secondary answer would be 1 minus the square root of 3 divided by 4. And again, put the numerator in first, hit enter, and then divide by 4. And that gives you an approximate answer of negative 0.18. And remember what we're doing when we're solving here. If we were to graph this equation, y equals 4x squared minus 2x minus 1/2, you could put that into decimals, and what you would see if you were to touch the x-intercepts, decimals would give you an x-intercept of 0.68 and an x-intercept of negative 0.18. And again, these are the approximate answers. There's a lot more decimals that go after these. And then the one that we just leave in simplified radical form, that would be our exact. So exact and approximate. So this kind of gives you a purpose for why we were simplifying radicals, and it connects back to the quadratic formula. This concludes your video on exact and approximate answers with quadratic formula.